And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
Our next performer, it is my great pleasure to introduce, as someone who grew up in Kodiak, it's always fun to introduce another Kodiak fisherman. Toby Sullivan has been fishing out of Kodiak for many years, coming up on a big anniversary. He comes from a very long line of Irish storytellers. The blood of the Irish kings runs in his veins, I hear. Also the executive director of the Kodiak Maritime Museum. Let's give it up for Toby Sullivan, please.
Good evening, everyone. Is this the right mic? Can you hear me? Okay, cool. This next story is a true story as far as it goes. Thank you for that. It's called Here There Be Dragons. A little after 4 in the morning on a summer day in 2002, 3 set netters pushed their skiff off a beach in Uganic Bay on the west side of Kodiak and headed for their gill net a quarter of a mile away. It was daylight, but barely. The difference between sea and sky and mountain still questionable. The shoreline and the greasy water and buoys on the net visible only in shades of gray. Dave Little, Tolliff Monson, and a third crew member had climbed into the skiff a few minutes before with 4 hours sleep. The sliver of rest was not unusual for them during salmon openings, and they had made the run out to that net hundreds of times that summer and knew the routine at a level beyond consciousness. Dave Little, the fishing permit holder, was driving the skiff, just enough awake to keep the boat headed in the right direction and from hitting any logs. The 2 crew members focused on not falling out of the skiff. And then suddenly, a couple skiff lengths off the port side bow, something struck its head out of the water. 9 years later, the crew member, Monson, would tell an interviewer, "There's this neck and head, and it wasn't like your hands around this neck big. It was like your arms around this neck big." In the same interview, Dave Little would say, "I saw it do its movements, but I couldn't tell you if the neck was a foot in diameter or 3 feet in diameter. It was all darkish, but I was paying attention to driving the skiff. However big it was, it didn't pay them any mind." Monson remembers this: "It didn't really focus on us. It didn't look at us. It didn't make eye contact, no. And whatever it was didn't stick around. In a few seconds, it was gone, back under the water. I mean, we were so tired, it was like, did I just see that? Did we just see that? So what does he think it was?" "Who knows," he said. The next summer, Monson stayed behind in the holding skiff one evening to clean it out while Little and the other crew member went to pull a set. It was calm and sunny. He was crawling around scrubbing the fish totes when something hit the bottom of the skiff. All of a sudden, it was like, dong, and the skiff kind of lurches, and I'm like, "What the hell was that?" he said. There was no motor on the skiff. It was at anchor, and there were no whales nearby. He said, "It was big, like a log hitting the skiff, but nothing goes dong and lurches this big old skiff like that." I don't know what that was either. 30 years before that, on a sunny day in the summer of 1971, another group of set net fishermen in a skiff had also seen a large sea animal that they did not recognize. In 1977, Eddie Pakkanen, who was in the skiff that day, told the Kodiak High School oral history magazine, Elwani, that the animal was about 30 feet long and, quote, "had a head on it like a horse and would blow through its nose." Pakkanen said that another man in the skiff, DeWitt Fields, fired at the animal with a rifle as they approached it. This is Kodiak in the olden days. The animal went below the surface then and turned and swam under the skiff before surfacing on the other side. We don't know what it was, but it had a grayish color, and we couldn't see any fins or any tail, and it never made any noise. It would just come up and you could see the head and part of the body. Another person in the skiff that sunny day, also quoted in the Elwani article, remembered recently that the animal was, quote, hanging out when they first saw it. And like Eddie Pakkanen, he remembered that as the skiff crowded the animal against the shoreline, it turned and came toward them on the surface, and then, about 25 yards out, dove and swam under the boat. They all had a good look at it as the animal swam 2 feet beneath the surface of the clear water. In the Elwani interview, this second witness says the animal was more like 40 feet long, quote, with a dull brown color, and it did have hair, sort of like a sea lion, but not as thick. It had real narrow and long head, kind of horse-shaped, with 2 nostrils. When it came up, the head and neck and part of the back came up, with water covering the middle part, and then the tail would come up behind that. In the photo taken that day from the skiff by DeWitt's Field's wife, Wanda, reprinted in the Elwani magazine and interpreted recently by that second witness who was there. A long snout skims the water ahead of the eye. The nape of the neck behind the eye slopes down into the back beneath the surface, and the tail behind it just breaks the surface. Big eye, long nose, nostrils way out in front. It looks like Alf, the late 80s alien life form sitcom character. Eddie Pakkanen told his interviewer that the animal appeared around 2 every afternoon for a few more days before disappearing forever. The other person in the skiff remembers seeing the animal one more time 2 or 3 years later. His family had closed up camp for the summer and were loading their skiffs for the 100-mile run back to town. They looked up and saw the animal right off the beach. Quote, if we hadn't been trying to beat the tide, we would have gone out for a better look, but we were pressed. The tide was dropping. He never saw the animal again. And finally this. On April 15th, 1969, the Mylark, a 65-foot wooden shrimp boat working in Raspberry Straits, recorded something on its echo sounder at 55 fathoms that the Kodiak Daily Mirror put on their front page 5 days later with the headline, quote, a sea monster? The tone of the accompanying article treats the paper recording with droll skepticism, and the incident comes up on a number of websites devoted to sea monsters, UFOs, and other not quite measurable things. But the skipper of the Mylark, Chet Peterson, did some calculations and judged in apparent good faith that given the echo sounder's field of view of the ocean floor at that depth, the strange dinosaur-like object just above the curving bottom line was over 200 feet long. But again, who knows? This is a poem. It's just as true. It's called Waking in December. The storm hunches in the ocean steppes between the Pacific and the Bering Sea, isobars honed against the wheel of the earth, wrapped tight beneath occluding robes of cloud, waiting for Coriolis' signal to spring forth the front like cavalry or the slashing arm of Khan, a 500-mile scimitar of wind struck against the snow-penitent mountains of the coast. From a dream of summer, I wake to rattling snow driven against my windows at daybreak. So I fished year-round for decades, and I fished in the winter, and I'd be in town, and my kids were little then, and this was one day when my son Abraham was 4, one evening. It's called The First Marker. The day ends in the quiet darkness of a February night. From his bed in the front room, Abraham tells me some meandering tale of Miss Molly and the song he'll teach her tomorrow at preschool. And his voice tumbles like a brook after rain, but he is fading, and the sound of the rain is gaining on him. He stops talking, and I can hear him listening to the night against the window, to the wind in the spruce trees, to the lowing of the buoy off Spruce Cape, the first marker of the open sea where I go when I am not there. This poem is called September in Kodiak. Each night, the darkness advances further into the flanks of the retreating days, slashing at the morning and evening light like an army with fresh horses, riding hard beneath a crisp new flag of black sky and white stars. This afternoon it rained, and I drove out to the flats and saw the willow leaves are just now turning yellow and falling on the road and into Sargent Creek, and the salmon, tattered black and green among the yellow leaves, are still weeks from petering out, but the gulls are tired of eating them. This last one, I think it's self-explanatory. It's called The Things You Need. You need Goodyear Extra Tough boots, 2 pairs for when the ankles get holes from being folded down to dry, 2 sets of Orange Grundon's rain gear, jacket and pants. Dutch Harbor Grand gear is okay too, they even have pockets now. But the hoods on the Helly Hansen jackets are too small for some guys, and the dark green color is invisible at night in the water if you go over, if anything happens. Nothing from West Marine will last one good day. If it looks like something you'd wear on a sailboat, forget about it. Even on the reinforced Grundons, the knees will go out in a few weeks, climbing into the pots, climbing up on the stack, hefting 100-pound coils of line into the pot with your knee. The crabs will grab the cuffs, the sleeves will catch on the corners of pots, the picking hook will tear the sleeve on the shoulder, and it will happen a minute after you walk on deck in a brand new jacket. The smell of orange plastic fresh in the wind, the $70 price tag still flapping on the collar as you tear it off in disgust. You need neoprene wristers like the sleeves of a diver's dry suit, at least 2 pairs, so there's always warm ones in the dryer. A couple dozen cotton glove liners, a case of green neoprene gloves, $100 a dozen, with the long cuffs that go up under the sleeves of your rain jacket so the water runs down your arm and off your fingers. You need them because the dryer will make them brittle, because thousands of spiny opilio crab shells will scuff the rubber off the fingertips, because 100 miles of line will come out of the crab block every day and abrade the notch between your right thumb and index finger like a fast river cutting through soft rock. Because at the end of the trip, half the lefts will still be new in the drawer under your bunk, and all the rights will be trashed in a box in the entryway, and you will pick through them every morning looking for the ones with the smallest holes. You need a wool stocking hat, though it will get wet and freeze and weigh so much your neck will hurt. A military tank helmet liner with a little strap that snaps under your chin for your ears in February, warping up against the ice pack in the Pribilofs. A neoprene face mask for when it gets really cold, when the ice fog starts moving across the water in those spooky little wisps. An insulated Mustang suit for working on top of the crab pot stack in the wind, for chopping ice off the rails, for setting the anchor at 2 a.m. behind St. Paul when it's blowing 50. Make sure it's the kind with the inflatable collar that has a mouth tube to blow it up, that will keep your head out of the water if anything happens, and a CO2 cartridge that goes off automatically, hopefully, if you are unconscious, if anything happens. You need lots of hats, build caps with the logos of bars and canneries and equipment companies. Sometimes hats are lucky, but you will not keep them. They will blow off in the wind when you look up at a Coast Guard 130s going over, get ground up in the bait chopper by your friends for a joke, dropped between the dock and the boat while drunk, taken by girlfriends for souvenirs, lost. You need a pair of uptown jeans for the elbow room, a set of Carhartts for doing gear work in town, thick polypropylene socks, all of one pattern so you know whose are whose when they come out of the dryer, felt boot liners, those little blue booty inserts, sweatpants and hooded sweatshirts, enough to always have a dry set to put on, lots of cotton t-shirts for changing out between strings of gear when you soak them through with your sweat, underwear. You need a knowledge of cookery, the ability to learn how to change the oil on a Caterpillar 3298, an appreciation for dawn, a respect for night, books about anything, money, your toothbrush, extra strength Tylenol, knee pads, a Walkman, Jimi Hendrix for good days and Hank Williams for bad ones, paper for letters, stamps to mail them, a calling card for the phone on the dock in Akutan, the numbers of people who will answer that phone late at night, who will listen to you breathe when you forget what you wanted to say, who will know without being told. Pictures of those people, a calendar, the memory of dry land, summer, trees, and the smell of your woman, a piece of her clothing in case you forget, your plans for the future, and a plane ticket home. Thank you.
Well, it's good night, Joe. Guess we've had us a time. Wore a hole through them cards and you took my last dime. But you ain't beat me yet. You've had plenty of time. Ain't there nothing two old fools can't do? Better get on your way. There's a breeze blowing easterly. You're a slowpoke and it's no joke. You ain't what you used to be. Those clouds on the moon make it harder than hell to see, and you know it's a long way to go. And it's good night, Joe. Don't forget to put plenty of coal on the fire.
Thank you for joining us here to talk about FisherPoets Gathering. Can you tell me your name, please?
I'm Charlie Becker.
Charlie, I am so happy to meet you. Are you an Astoria local, or did you come from?
I'm a dual citizen. I'm from Portland and Astoria.
So you are well qualified to come to the Astoria FisherPoets Gathering.
Plus I'm an old sailor, so that doesn't hurt. Oh. I'm an old Navy sailor.
Perfect.
And I will say it's such a delight. The performances here, more than that, the seminars taught by these real pros, who are real pros at their literal thing, their poetry and the way they present. So there's a great deal for all of us to learn, I think, going through this. I'm also a bit of a mandolin player myself, so I kind of fade in with this sort of thing. It's very artsy too. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I've heard the workshops are really, really good as well. So I'm glad you're
very good on doing your writing. These guys on the water, evidently they occupy themselves doing their writing. They're really remarkably creative. I'm sure you must observe the same thing. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Charlie, how many years have you been doing this?
I'm about 4 years into this one. Okay, and it is kind of new to me, but about 4 years. But I fit right in, and well, for the most part. But there's really a community of people on the water who come here, and I do feel that most of us don't know what it's like to be on that water out there. So here it is brought for us. We get a sense of it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I know it's only Friday. We haven't had the Saturday performances yet, but what's been your favorite part so far?
I think some of the workshops I attended yesterday, which involved your writing of your content and the telling of your story, because we do have stories, and so much of this really is about stories, and it has broad application for stories of all sorts. And so they teach you how to prompt yourself, how you might get enthusiastic, how to present, and really how to find your voice. I mean, really, isn't that what it is? Most of us want to find our voice in what we do.
You know what? We are so lucky we got to talk to you today. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you. Likewise.
Appreciate it.